This presentation is on Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson is perhaps one of the most well-known men in our country's history, and with good reason. His political exploits are what he is best known for, being one of our country's founding fathers, authoring the Declaration of Independence, and holding office as our third president. However, Jefferson is also responsible for American education as we know it today. Jefferson's contribution to American education was pivotal, shaping higher education in our country as well as public education. Jefferson was born in the Virginia wilderness to Peter and Jane Jefferson in 1743. His father was a surveyor and planter who died during Jefferson's teen years, and his mother came from one of Virginia's most influential families at the time. Jefferson was the oldest son, having 6 sisters and 1 surviving brother. He inherited the land that would eventually become Monticello after his father's death, some 5,000 acres on which he grew many elaborate gardens of his own design. Jefferson studied law and held several offices before being chosen to write the Declaration of Independence in 1776. Jefferson was a brilliant and well-read man. In fact, Jefferson was such an avid reader that his personal library of books held more volumes than the National Library of Congress during his time. Jefferson's personal collection served as a replacement for the National Library of Congress after all of those books were lost to a fire in 1815. Jefferson also wrote well and often, with over 26,000 documents found at Monticello after his death. It was apparent that Jefferson had an appreciation for knowledge and literacy on a personal level, and this permeated his politics and sparked his interest in educational reform in the newly formed country that he helped found. Jefferson held books and newspapers in high regard, once stating that the basis of our governments being the opinion of the people, the very first object should be to keep that right. And were it left to me to decide whether we should have governments without newspapers or newspapers without government, I should not hesitate a moment to prefer the latter. But what I mean is that every man should receive those papers and be capable of reading them. The fact that Jefferson was a proponent for public education comes as no surprise. He himself was a truly intellectual individual, seeking enlightenment above all else. Jefferson believed that true freedom necessitated the ability to read and write well, perform basic mathematics, have an understanding of history, philosophy, and of course politics. Jefferson also saw value in the arts, and he himself was an architect and musician. It was in fact Jefferson himself who designed Monticello, as well as other notable buildings, including many found at the University of Virginia, which he founded. Jefferson was a true example of the type of thinking fostered by the 18th century Enlightenment. Jefferson admired Bacon, Locke, and Newton, and considered them the 3 greatest men that have ever lived, without any exception, and as having laid the foundation of those superstructures which have been raised in the physical and moral sciences. Jefferson was so influenced by John Locke's political philosophy that he quoted Locke's second treatise verbatim in the Declaration of Independence. Locke believed that men are shaped by experience, and that at birth the mind is a blank slate. Locke is well known for this philosophy, known as tabula rasa, and was an influence not only to Jefferson but many of the founding fathers. Other influences that Locke had on Jefferson and many of the American revolutionaries is the idea of religious tolerance and separation of church and state. However, Jefferson was not free of hypocrisy, in fact quite the opposite. Though the Declaration of Independence refers to all men as equal and preaches freedom for all, Jefferson owned an estimated 600 or more slaves over his lifetime. It is thought by some historians that Jefferson may have even fathered children with a young female slave after the death of his wife. As progressive as many of Jefferson's ideas were, his picture of freedom and equality still only applied to white males. Though Jefferson is better known for his political involvement, his views on education were inextricably entwined with his political views. Jefferson believed that a successful and orderly society was not possible without the people being educated. Jefferson once said, "I know no safe depository of the ultimate powers of society but the people themselves. And if we think them not enlightened enough to exercise their control with a wholesome discretion, the remedy is not to take it from them, but to inform their discretion by education." By giving the people access to an education, Jefferson believed that he was providing them with everything they needed to be good citizens, most notably the ability to read, write, and speak proper English. Jefferson believed that men should have access to education regardless of social status, supporting a public school system that was paid for through taxation. He wanted it to be a system of general instruction which shall reach every description of our citizens, from the richest to the poorest. Not only did Jefferson want education accessible to the poor, he wanted it to be of equal quality. Though this would not happen for many years, it was Jefferson's ideas that laid the basis for public schools as we see them today. While Jefferson's involvement in the public school system was extremely important, he is perhaps better known as an advocate for higher education. Jefferson founded the University of Virginia as a secular institution where students could study ancient and modern languages, history, natural and physical science, literature, politics, and law. Jefferson believed that a good education was both liberal and vocational, and that the two could not be separate. Jefferson's ideas and philosophies on education were directly influenced by the American Revolution and the newly formed United States. Jefferson's ideas of human rights and his vision of America involved education not only as a right, but the duty of a good citizen. Though Jefferson believed that an educated population betters society as a whole, he also believed in educating oneself for the sake of knowledge. He also thought that the pursuit of knowledge should be a lifelong endeavor and advocated studying independently throughout one's life. Jefferson was a progressive thinker, acknowledging that education was a means of improving not only the individual, but a society as a whole. Even in his twilight years, Jefferson made major contributions to the United States and to education. Jefferson was already an elderly man at 76 years old when he founded the University of Virginia. Not only did he design the buildings and write the curriculum, but he obtained the location and was highly involved in its operation. In 1826, at the age of 83 years old, Jefferson died. Ironically, it was on July the 4th, the 50th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. Jefferson left behind a long-standing legacy, and is not only a founding father of our country, but the founding father of public education.